Hey guys, this is Grant Evans, your favorite Utah realtor. We are here today at the closing table live in Orem, Utah. We are here with Stacy and Shawn Catmull of The Lending Company. A little background of them. I have this big long list of achievements that they have accomplished in their lives. So again, they are the owners, not just working at The Lending Company, the owners of The Lending Company, which is a awesome mortgage broker that I have had the opportunity of working with. They've been business owners for over 25 years. Mortgages has been over 10. They just closed on their 100th transaction of the year, and they started in March. Is that right? You started the company in March.
The company started in March. That was our first 100.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. So Stacy is recognized as one of the most influential women in mortgages. Do we know what magazine that was from? I can't remember. It was in one magazine. It was somewhere. I can't remember the name of it. She is influential in not just mortgages, but she also has a charity called the Hope Hive, which focuses on women in mortgage and supporting local community causes. Shawn, I've had the pleasure of golfing with Shawn, and he loves it. He's great at it, always gives me advice. Shawn is the first one to receive the Royal Diamond Award, which is awarded to the top salesman at Niken. Is that I pronounced that right?
That's right.
Which sells wellness products, and he sold over $1 billion, billion with a B, in products.
So first one under 30.
First one under 30.
Yes.
Let me just add on to that.
Very young.
Yes.
Very young.
You guys are also the top recruiters in the nation for mortgages for loan officers that are joining your company. You have 4 kids and a dog that sometimes you love more than your kids, which is half true, right? Just depends on the day.
That's what she said.
Yeah. You guys love your kids.
Yeah.
The dog too.
The dog's easier.
Yeah, everybody's loved equally, right? And Jackson, your son, is he your oldest?
Yeah, he's our oldest.
He is your assistant.
Yes.
So today we're going to be talking about seller credits and how that benefits our buyers in obtaining a property. I guess I'll give a little background of my spiel, and then you guys can give your spiel. So seller credits, as far as a realtor goes, I can use that for negotiation tactics to help a buyer take some money off their closing costs, interest rate, things like that. So I guess we'll turn the time over to you guys. Why would somebody want to use seller credits when buying a home?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to talk about is that seller credits aren't always an option, right? Seller credits really depend on the market and what's going on in the market. If you have a seller's market and people are really interested in buying homes, seller credits aren't normally always available. But if you have a buyer's market where maybe sales have slowed down a little bit, or like the market we're in right now where interest rates are a little bit higher, then seller credits become a viable option. And you can use seller credits to your advantage to help you to get into a home, right? To lower the cash to get you into a home, but you can also use them to be able to lower your monthly payment, which is really important right now in a high interest environment.
Yeah, I think it's really nice to have seller credits right now, especially with the last 2 years where the buyer's been paying for the seller credits.
Yeah.
Like the buyer's been offering. I've even had a couple times where this has won a couple offers. The buyer would offer to pay $1,000 to $3,000 of the seller's closing costs.
Yeah.
And the seller's like, ooh, sweet. Yeah, you're going to pay mine. Now, tides have kind of turned. The table turns have turned.
Yes.
Turntables have turned, right? Is that what
the closing table has turned?
The closing table has turned. I like that.
Yeah.
Now the sellers get to pay for them, which is kind of a normal thing. And the max is about 3% that a seller can contribute. Is that right?
Yeah, it actually depends on the loan, and it depends on what they're contributing for. Because like, say, for example, I mean, there's different things, right? Like if we're doing a 2-1 buy down, which we can get into further, they actually can contribute more than 3%. So it can go all the way up to 9%, depending upon how much money they're putting down and the loan amount. So there's lots of different ways to use the seller credit. But yes, as loan officers, especially, we love the market where buyers can use sellers' money to help them pay their closing costs, because it opens up the door for so many more buyers. Like I have a buyer this morning who she really wanted to buy last year, but all she had was enough for her down payment. And now her income has gone up a little bit more, so she can qualify for a little bit more. But now all she has to bring in is her down payment because the seller can cover her closing costs. And so she is now able to get into a home instead of where last year she was having to, come up with a lot of extra cash in order to get into a home. So it's kind of cool that way.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, it's like people just want to get into the home when they can get into the home. And, a couple of years ago, she was not able to, and now she is.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Is there a chance, like, if somebody's doing a zero down, USDA, Utah Housing, VA, and the closing costs covered all the closing costs, that's no down payment loan, so it's not helping out with that. Do they get any money back, or maybe does that go towards the purchase of the home instead, having a price reduction?
They can do a 2-1 buy down.
Yeah.
On a VA loan.
Yeah, you can. So you can do, you can use some of that contribution. Like, so say, for example, the sellers decide to contribute more than 3% or more than is allowable for that specific product. Then in that case, it does go to it doesn't come as cash back. It goes towards a price reduction. So, but that doesn't necessarily really help the buyer, because having a couple $1,000s off your loan doesn't really increase or decrease your payment or necessarily help you. So we kind of try to negotiate it so that it's, you're getting the most utilization that you can out of those closing costs and you're not wasting them.
Speaking of utilization, what would you say is, I guess, depending on the buyer, the most usefulness that you can use towards seller credits?
Yeah. So right now, I think probably a 2-1 buy down is something that is really useful. Shawn, do you want to explain how that works?
Oh yeah, by far, because let's say, for example, on a normal, 2-1 buy down, you're thinking around $400,000 or $500,000. You're thinking that's going to be maybe $7,000 to $10,000 on a 2-1 buy down.
Well, let's first explain what a 2-1 buy down is.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you did already.
So on a 2-1 buy down, the way that the 2-1 buy down works is you use a portion of seller credit in order to buy down your interest rate. So for the first year, so like today, rates are at about 7% today, right? So in order to be able to reduce your monthly payment, what happens is the seller actually pays a portion of your interest for the first year and for the second year. So on the first year, they pay 2 points of interest. On the second year, they pay 1 point of interest. And that money is actually kept in a separate escrow account. And then it's just contributed every single month to the interest payment. So you would be paying interest, instead of paying interest at 7% the first year, you would be paying interest at 5% the first year, which can lower your payment depending on your loan amount. It can be $500 to $1,000 a month, which is a huge difference in payment, right? And it's kind of sometimes the difference between whether or not a buyer wants to buy now or whether they want to wait. Now, in the next year, that payment will bump up to a 6%, and then and then in the third year, it bumps up back to that 7%. So it's not like a balloon mortgage or anything like that. You're capped at that 7% what the interest rate is today. Your payment will never go higher than that unless, you refinance it. But you get to take advantage for a couple of years of the seller helping you with your payment.
And you qualify on the 7%, not the 5% or the 6%.
Right. So we're not doing
break.
but we're not doing risky loans. We're not qualifying somebody off 5%, but then it's going to go up to a 7%. They're qualifying off that 7%.
But I think the difference is, Grant, is Stacy did a great job explaining that. That's why, all the accolades.
Oh yeah.
Of course.
Yes.
But I think when it comes down to it, a lot of people go, well, why do the 2-1 buy down? Why don't I just take that $10,000 and buy down the rate? And I go, well, we can do that, and we can look at those options. But a lot of times, $10,000 won't get you a long way. So maybe it's a quarter point, or maybe a little bit more.
Maybe half a point, or even a point.
Speaking of points,
yeah,
I don't understand the vocabulary of points. So when you say
let's talk about that.
So in my head, a point is like a percent.
Yeah, and so in reality,
that basically is what it is.
Okay,
that is exactly what it is, and that's why you're so smart. Quarter point. And so when we're looking at what makes sense for the client, they're saying how much does this save each month on my mortgage? And on a quarter point buy down, let's say, for example, we'll go from a 7% to a 6 3/4. You may only save $100 a month.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
So
especially paying a ton of money for it.
Yeah, why didn't I just take the $10,000 in closing costs, and not bring any closing costs, into closing?
Yeah, I can save $10,000 from my pocket.
Correct. And this is the point. In some of these scenarios, we did 2-1 buy downs, and we thought, some of these people were saving $600-700 a month the first year, the first 12 months. Well, everything that we hear, rates are getting to that point where it's hitting that that top point, and maybe over the next year, first quarter, second quarter, we're going to see a decline in interest rates. Well, what if that same client bought down that rate, saved that $100, right? But in 6 months comes to us and says, hey, just a minute here. Rates are at 6% and 5%. I want to refi. Well, you lost all that money.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I do like the 2-1 buy down. I partially don't, but not for bad reasons. The only reason is like, okay, in 3 years at 7% interest, can that same buyer keep up with the 7%? And they most likely will, because if they've been pre-approved for it 3 years ago, they could probably do it now. In my head, I kind of give this example a couple times. So like it's a win, draw, win scenario with a 2-1 buy down. You win the first thing because if it's in 3 years and your interest rate's 7%, and they've gone down to 5%, yeah, it's a win, because then you can refinance, roll those closing costs into your loan and see if it helps save on your monthly payment. And the draw, because in 3 years, let's say the interest rate's 7 or whatever the third year is, you didn't really win or lose. It's just how life is now.
It just is what it is.
Is what it is. And then the third option, you win because let's say interest rates are at 10% in 3 years. Well, now you're not paying 10.
That's true.
But still, a caveat is you still need, like as a homeowner, you still need to be comfortable with paying that 7% interest. It's not just, they don't get caught up on the fanciness. That's not the right word, but I'm going to use it anyway. The fanciness of the 5% interest, and then you get used to that. You want to put some money away. Maybe it's in the escrow account or just personally, put some money away as if you're paying the 7% mortgage payment. And then when it gets to that point, then you're ready for that. I mean, you can even take away too. This has occurred to me, and probably other people have thought about it too. If you're saving up that money, if you're paying a 7% interest rate, let's say it's like $400 difference or a $500 difference, instead of stowing it away for your next time, use that to pay down your principal.
Right. Exactly. And there's really smart strategies like that. And that's one of the things. I mean, there is a good chance in the next 2 years, right, that rates will come down a little bit and we'll be able to refinance those people, But at the same point, there is a chance too that those buyers could mess up their finances and not be able to refinance.
That's the big drawback for us.
And that's really is like, so I always try to be really clear with my clients and say, hey, you have to realize that this is just like your payment really is here. And if you're not comfortable with that, then maybe it's not a great time for you to buy a house, right? But if you're wanting to get into a house and you're going to do it regardless, then you might as well take advantage of that 2-1 buy down. But what a smart idea, right? Take some of that extra money that you're saving, pay down your principal amount, and then when you go to refinance, your payoff is way lower and you're going to have more equity in your home and you're going to be able to pay off your loan faster.
Maybe
so use it as an
insurance.
advantage. Yes, use it as an advantage for yourself, because right now you have your seller paying your interest, so you don't have to worry about that as much. You can use some of that money to pay down your principal. And that would be that would be the ideal buyer, right? Somebody who can totally afford that payment and they are able to really make some progress in their mortgage.
Again, they're qualifying off the 7%.
Yeah.
So it's not like, hey, I had no idea this loan was going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
In a couple of years, right? We've gone through that whole process. I think the big thing too that maybe we're missing is, let's say, for example, in 6 to 12 months, they say, hey, wow, rates have gone down to 4% or 5%. We want to lock in the lowest payment that we would have had, that we're paying right now. Am I going to lose that money
that the seller contributed?
That the seller contributed. And the nice thing on a 2-1 buy down is you don't. That actually goes toward principal reduction.
It goes to your payoff. Yeah.
What would you say is probably the demographic of people that are using the 2-1 buy down? Are they mostly people who have sold their home and buying the second one, or are they first-time home buyers? Who's using the 2-1 buy down?
It's attractive to first-time home buyers because they're usually the ones that are on the budget, right? And so
things are changing in their life, right?
Yeah.
It's like their income is going up versus older people. It's like maybe their income is coming down.
But with first-time home buyers, they're also, I think, the most risky, for the 2-1 buy down because they aren't quite yet set in their income. And then there's also some other programs for first-time home buyers that can help bring the payment down. Like I had a first-time home buyer who we were planning on using the 2-1 buy down, but they needed the money for closing costs, and we were able to kind of flip their loan and use a first-time home buyer program that got their rate a half a point lower anyway. And so we just ended up going with, the fixed rate for them. So I would say that, I would say first-time home buyers, but also we work a lot with first-time home buyers. It's kind of our specialty. So obviously that's who we're seeing.
Then reverse mortgages, which we need to have another episode about reverse mortgages because you love
reverse mortgages are so cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I would think that but those people who are moving into their second homes, they actually are the very best candidates for the 2-1 buy down, because most of the time, they can afford the payment that they're going to be at. They just don't want to make it. They just don't want their payment, to be at $4,500 a month. They'd much rather have it be at, $3,300 a month. And so, but they're not as worried about their finances. They're more settled in their jobs. So, people who are moving up to that second home, what's really cool is when people are taking advantage of the equity in their home right now, because equities have just gone crazy the last couple of years. So they're either selling their home or they're going to rent it out, use the money, like either from a HELOC or from the sale of their home to buy a nice new house. They have a lot to put down on the home. So their loan amount's not crazy, but they have their dream home, and then they're taking advantage of the 2-1 buy down, and it's awesome. Speaking
of seller credits and 2-1 buy down, can you do that on investment property?
2-1 buy downs are not available on investment properties.
That would be cool.
I know, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. It would be awesome.
But we do have, on investment properties, you can do a no doc, 25% down, interest only, up to 40 years right now.
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's really good.
Yeah, there are some really cool programs to allow investors. We should do one on that, to allow investors to get into homes, even right now where rates might be high and it might be hard to qualify. So
another thought that comes to my mind, a lot of people who watch this channel are people relocating either to the state of Utah or away from it. Would you recommend the 2-1 buy down for those individuals? Or I guess it probably depends. Or would you rather say, let's keep your money in your pocket, or maybe let's do a fixed rate buy down?
So let's talk a little bit about...
Might be a bad question. Yeah, we've already talked about it.
Let's talk a little bit about the fixed rate buy down, because sometimes the fixed rate buy down, it does make sense, right? If you have, we have a client right now where they need to pay for closing costs. They need the buyer to pay, or the seller to pay for just their general closing costs, just their loan costs, their title fees, their escrow account, right? But then also they want to take advantage of buying down the interest rate, but we might not be able to get enough closing costs to do the 2-1 buy down and cover their closing costs. And so in that case, it really makes sense. Well, let's just use the extra $3,000 or $4,000 and buy down their interest rate a quarter. But you can only buy down the interest rate so much. It's only 2 points that you can buy down the interest rate, right?
It's 2%. But how much is 2 points?
It's 2 points is not necessarily, but it's not necessarily 2%. It's 2% of the loan amount. So if you have a loan that's $200,000 and you want to buy down the rate, the max you can use is $4,000 to buy down the rate. So It's not that much, right? You can't buy a 7.5 interest rate down to a 4. They won't allow you to do it. It's too high cost. So you only have so far that you can buy down that rate. But for people who maybe can't get, maybe the house that they're going for is just a little bit, more popular, or the sellers aren't willing to give as much because they know they don't need to, you can still use a little bit of money to buy down your interest rate and maybe save a couple $100 a month. For sure. So if you're relocating, I really think that there's no reason, honestly, for people not to take advantage of the 2-1 buy down. If you can qualify for the rate and you understand, unless you plan on losing your job, or for example, you have a spouse that's not going to be working,
or you're self-employed, maybe.
Yeah, or you're just factoring that into whether or not you can afford the house. Then it's not a good idea for the 2-1 buy down. If you're well, we can afford it this year and we can afford it next year, but we won't be able to afford it the third year, then don't do it, right? But if you can afford that payment and you're oh yeah, we would buy the house anyway, regardless, then you might as well just do the 2-1 buy down, because you're just going to save so much. You're going to save so much money over a span of time. It's such a great way to just save money, or to, like you said, pay down your mortgage or whatever it is you want to do. Financially, it's really smart to do, whether you're relocating or whether you're buying your first home or whether you're buying your second home, whatever it is.
I think one thing that to be clear about is when you're buying down a rate, if I'm buying down a rate $5,000 and I'm only saving $100 a month,
Not a great use of your $5,000.
No, it's not worth it. It's more like use that $5,000 to
what's the
seller
point?
credit to pay off your closing costs.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where I see the value.
That's hard money.
Yeah. It's hard money. That's money that's not
It's
out of my pocket.
out of my checking account, you know. But you look at it and go, do I really want to get myself in a situation where it's like, hey, I can't refi, like I can't justify a refi in 4, 5, 6 years because I already just front end loaded all those costs.
Right. You want to be able to pay off, like, so if you're going to buy down a rate, most people refinance their house within 2 to 3 years. So if you're going to buy down your interest rate, you want to make sure that you're able to, like, that savings is paid off within 2 to 3 years. If it's any more than that, it may not be worth the rate buy down. So, but if you just have extra money that the seller's contributing, then you might as well buy down your rate.
Yeah. For me, almost, it's as a self-employed individual, I like the 2-1 buy down idea. I do have this back of my mind thought that in 3 years, am I going to still be in real estate? I hope so.
Yeah.
And 2, I don't know what I'm going to make on year 3.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, okay, I'm going to save the money every month. If I do the 2-1 buy down, if I have a seller credit though of $5,000 and it's only going to give me 0.25% off on my interest rate,
Yeah,
I'm not going to do
$100
that.
or whatever.
I'm going to use that $5,000 to pay off my closing costs.
Or to keep in your bank account or whatever.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
In
that
case
helps
of
me save
emergency.
money and just makes me feel better as like a self-employed individual that like, okay, I can keep money in my bank. I can keep, in case of a rainy storm that I'm not going to have any deals for
Keep it
6
in
months.
reserve.
Yeah.
Keep it in
it
reserve.
in a savings account.
Yeah. And really, as loan officers, that's our job, right? It's to show you the different options that you have and then help you understand how they affect you on a monthly basis and how your finances will work with those deals.
I think a lot of people too, they need to understand, like, it's not just like turn them and burn them scenario with you guys. It's okay. If I'm struggling on my payment on year 3, I'm going to call Stacy and Shawn and say, I'm struggling. Right. What do I do?
What can I do?
What can I do? And then it's in your guys' best interest, and also your servicers, who ends up servicing the loan, that they homeowner pay off the loan.
Right.
They don't want to have to, go in short sale or foreclosure or anything like that. It's not in the servicer's best interest.
Right. And we talk to our clients about the things that they could do that would make it so that they can't refinance. Like, don't miss a mortgage payment. Like, if you miss a mortgage payment, you may be able to refinance, but it might be a whole year before you can refinance again. Like, don't make late payments on your credit, right? Because if you get to a certain credit score, you can't refinance. Like, make sure that, you're not getting into so much debt. Like, there's lots of different things that we go over with them to say, hey, these are the things. It's really not going to be interest rates most likely. I mean, who knows? The world is crazy right now. But most likely, we're going to have an opportunity in those 2 years to get you into a fixed rate. But it's going to be you that messes up your finances and makes it so you can't refinance it.
It's lost opportunities, right? I mean, so many people over the last couple of years, 2 years ago, because of their credit, they couldn't refi, right? They had a 6% or a 5%. They could not refi unless they sold their house. They don't want to sell their house. They lost that opportunity. Now it's back up to 6-7% now.
Oh, that's hard, especially when interest rates are at like 2.5 and 2.
I know, right?
2.75. Yeah.
Well, I had a friend too that, back in the day, they took out a mortgage with a balloon and they missed a mortgage payment and they had this balloon that came up and they couldn't refinance and they were paying like $2,000 additional on their mortgage every single month and they had to do it for a full year. So you just have to take care of your finances. You got to pay your stuff on time. Most people will work with you if you can't, but
watch out for student loans.
But make your mortgage payment always first.
You know they're being forgiven
medical
right now?
bills.
That's right.
Medical bills.
Well, medical
yes.
bills.
Medical bills.
Not
I've seen
much.
so
Medical
many of
bills,
them
though.
like just destroy
medical
a
bills
deal.
aren't. This year they passed. Medical bills aren't. They don't affect your credit score for more.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, which is
even
cool.
if they default. Wow.
Yeah,
Which is interesting.
so
That's going to be interesting to see how
all that kind of stuff.
See how that ripple effect takes place.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see what happens, but.
Yeah.
Lots of cool things that you can do with seller pay closing costs. It really is a fun market right now. If you can afford to buy, 100% you should be buying right now.
Like you and I are working with a buyer right now, and I've never in my time of being a realtor asked for $12,000.
I know, right?
And I sent the offer, and I gave him an explanation like why we were asking for $12,000, but I had zero doubt that they were like gonna laugh at it. You know,
Yeah.
they might come back and say, actually, let's talk about this because we
Let's
need to
maybe
figure
do
something.
10 or something.
Yeah, we might have to negotiate back and forth, which is fine. But like, I never thought 12,000 was beyond reasonable. Yeah.
So
like, it's pretty crazy.
Well, think about this. You're thinking that's crazy right now. 12 months ago or 6 months ago, you were like, should we offer $50,000 more?
Yeah. Yeah. Like seller credits weren't even like a consideration. They're like, you have to pay your own closing costs because I had a house in Midvale that I was selling, and we had about 13, 14 offers, and this was in March. And we had these offers, and any of them that had seller paid closing costs, my seller wouldn't look at it.
Oh yeah. They don't even look at them.
I would say, okay, they're asking for 5,000 closing costs. Nope.
Yeah.
Don't even care what they're offering.
I know.
You know, granted, if they're paying 5,000 closing costs, they can't pay 50,000 over asking.
Yeah.
Eventually, that house ended up selling for about 40,000. Was it 40? Yeah, it was about 40,000 over asking, which is
crazy?
Absolute crazy. It was this awesome small house in Midvale that the basement was probably about 6 feet tall, maybe 5.5 feet tall.
Yeah.
Very ideal.
Very ideal, right? And it's in Midvale, and the backyard is the cemetery.
Oh my gosh.
We got it all fixed up and everything looked great. You know, we use a Coldwell Banker program called Real Vitalize, which kind of the Coldwell Banker loans money to the homeowner to fix up the repairs, and then they just pay whatever cost they incurred at closing with no interest.
Yeah,
so we use that,
cool.
and it definitely helps out a ton. But we are out of time today, so thank you, guys. Thank you, Shawn and Stacy, for coming today.
Yeah.
Where can people reach you? How can people reach you?
You can reach us on our website, www.thelendingco.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Team Catmull Home Loans. That's TEAMCATMULL Home Loans. And Facebook is Stacy Catmull and Shawn Catmull.
Yeah. You guys have a lot of handles. So I
We
know,
do.
especially on Instagram, you have like 5
I've got
pages.
a few more too. I know, right? Yeah. We're still trying to figure out what direction we're going. But yes, you can Google us and reach us. That's easy too. Stacy
awesome.
Catmull.
And then what's your guys' email?
Just our first name, Stacy, at thelendingco.com.
And Shawn, SHAWN, at thelendingco.com.
If anybody who's relocating here, do you prefer to have them call you or email you?
Either way. Yeah. Call, text, email. We'll respond to everything.
Well, we don't work 8 to 5. You know, so even if we get a text at 11 o'clock and they're like, hey, we were moving into Utah, or hey, we're going from Utah to Colorado or Colorado to Idaho, we're actually licensed in
Colorado and Idaho.
Yeah, 3 states right now. Colorado, Idaho, and
I think one of the best things that you guys have to offer is that you are a broker.
Yes.
Instead of just saying, look, this is what the Lending Co. has to offer, it's 8%. You guys shop around.
Yes.
You guys shop around for the buyer, which I think is the greatest thing.
Our client is the buyer or the client, not our bank.
Right. Yeah. Which is so good.
Yeah,
so,
we love it.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming.
Thanks, Grant.
Feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Grant Evans Real Estate. Thank you for coming to the closing table, and we will see you next time. Thank you.